What's good, homies? Welcome back to Grimm. It's time for more trash television courtesy of TLC, and today's show is called Addicted to Marriage. And look, I saw this suggested to me and clicked on it thinking, oh, probably everybody on this show is on maybe their third, fourth, I don't know, fifth marriage if you're really crazy. I'm gonna give you a second to guess. Well, actually, I'm not gonna have you guess because it's probably in the title. This lady has been married 12 times. Actually, 13 times or 14 times because 2 of them she remarried twice in her past. We're gonna get into that. But this 50-something-year-old woman claims that she has been proposed to at least over 28 times, which is insane. So we're going to take a look into this lady's absolutely insane mind, because you just have to be a crazy person to want to do that many times, okay? Like I said, my high estimate for this show was going to be 3 or 4 times being remarried, not 12. That is just absolutely batshit insane. So without any further ado, make sure you like, as it really helps out the channel, and as always, subscribe if you haven't already. I fear if you don't like the video, you might be chosen to be number 13 after she divorces this new guy. And trust me, you don't want that, all right? She's going to take everything in the divorce. Anyways, let's get right on into it, shall we?
My name is Monette. I'm 52 years old, and I've been married 11 times.
That's right, you heard it from Monette. She has been married 11 times, which she's about to be on her 12th. She's met a new man, and they start this episode off with her doing some incredible singing on karaoke. I'm not going to really inundate you with the sound, but trust me, she is hitting those notes somewhat. Is the best I can say.
My screams will haunt your soul.
Do they purposefully have her sing an ominous-ass song, too? Like, I'm gonna marry you and take all you have in the divorce 6 months after, once it's finalized. Like, that song choice reminds me of every Netflix show. Once I point this out, it's gonna piss you off, but ever since sync licensing for music became a big thing and nobody actually uses big songs in shows anymore, I swear they're having AI or real people write songs that are perfect about whatever's happening in the show. So that's the only reason I make that joke, is because it just felt too on the nose that she's singing about some ominous person that's going to ruin your life, and it sounds like she's ruined 11 different men's lives. I mean, of course, probably a lot of them, they had a lot to do with the divorce too, but somebody who's going around and getting married 11 times, it's one of those, if it smells like dog shit everywhere you walk, check your shoes type moments, you know?
I would have to say I've been boy crazy ever since I've been about 2 when I had my first crush.
Okay, that's really psycho. Already getting crazy vibes from this lady who claims she's been boy crazy since, well, she was conscious. I mean, that was a few years before I was even conscious. I don't even think I have memory before I was like 6 or 7 years old. But she's like, nope, I've always been chasing after the boys. Never wanted to be single, even in preschool. Like, calm down, lady, all right? You're really weirding me out already.
I had crushes on my older brother's friends. I always picked which one I was going to marry.
I just love her psycho laugh as she's saying these really unnerving things that really she should be telling to a therapist, not a TV camera. But alas, this is TLC, and you know, these people are on here in place of therapy, and we got to thank them for it, because now we get to revel in their craziness with them.
I always fantasized about what my wedding would be like, what my husband would be like, and I definitely am in love with love.
She's in love with love. That's a good way to put it. I think you're in love with not having a job and kind of, you know, being able to take things from people's divorces, because, you know, you might hear me say that and say, whoa, Grimm, a little misogynistic. No, I would say the same thing about a guy who's been in a ton of divorces. Nobody is doing that often unless you're getting something out of these divorces, okay? Because it's a very expensive and time-consuming process, or so I've heard. Luckily, I'm happily married and not really planning on being divorced in my life. But from those who I know have gone through it, it's pretty abysmal to go through. So thinking of going through that 11 times, I'm going to keep saying that number throughout this video. That's just insane to me.
The thing I loved about marriage is that was just what I always believed you were supposed to be. You always were supposed to have a husband.
Yeah, so you could tell she was raised right in a household where she was told that pretty much you have no value unless you're attached to somebody and married to some, you know, baller dude. Like, it's so sad that so many people have this mindset. And of course, it's okay to have life goals and want to be married in your life, but if you think that you have no value outside of that, there's seriously something wrong with whatever was told to you as a kid or whatever you believe now as an adult.
So in my movie, that's what I had. When a guy didn't work, I just needed to find another actor.
And she claims that her life is a movie, and all these guys, these husbands of hers, who she probably can't even remember the name of all of them at this point, they were just various actors, okay? This franchise has a lot of reboots, and there's a lot of recasting that goes on, but trust me, that main actress, she's staying the same, all right? What a crazy, self-absorbed way to describe your life like that. That's insane to me.
Can you name all of your mom's husbands?
There was Ken,
Bob.
So now they're interviewing her oldest daughter, or maybe her only daughter, and her sister, people that should be the closest to her in her life. This daughter has been around since her first marriage, so she's been around all these guys, which we're not even going to get into how harmful I think that can be. I mean, seriously, having that many people around your kid as they're growing up, telling them this is your new dad, this is your new stepdad, number 9, I swear he's gonna, okay, nope, number 10, he's gonna work, nope, number 11, this is definitely the one, please trust me. Like, we really don't have to get into that, like I said, but yeah, neither of them can remember half of these guys' names. In fact, the sister can only name 4 out of the 11 so far. So clearly these guys weren't around for very long, and I'm just so confused at how nobody's tried to stop this menace from completing this cycle. When you hear she's getting married for the 4th or 5th time, at what point do you as her daughter or sister say something to her? You gotta sit down with her and have an intervention with this lady, because clearly there's something up in that brain of hers that ain't working right. So then she goes down the line and really starts to talk about all these different husbands of hers, and needless to say, there's one detail she brings up quite a bit. I'm gonna be skipping over what she says about him, but she really kind of compares them based on how good they were in the sack, which is quite messy, but also quite hilarious. I'm starting to get the vibe that that's what a lot of these marriages were about, because that seems to be the only thing she took away from them, you know, now that she's been divorced. It wasn't like, oh, he was the love of my life. He totally took me on all these amazing vacations. We made so many memories together. He's the father of my daughter, for example. No, she's just like, yeah, he was awesome. His stamina was crazy. Oh my God, he broke my bed frame. Like, seriously, husbands 1 through 7 did not, but I tell you, husband number 8, he had some thrusting power. Like, okay, Grandma, too much details. You're really grossing me out at this point. Damn it, they keep cutting back to this lady singing karaoke. I don't want to hear these notes, but wouldn't you know it, there's someone out there in the crowd watching her. Who's this? Lucky guy number 12, which again, I have to say, 2 of those guys, I think it was husband number 3 and number 7, she remarried twice because, you know, she really thought she made a mistake and went back to him, or maybe she just really loves the process of going through the divorces. Again, I have no freaking idea, but this guy's gonna be marriage number 14, but guy number 12, if you're keeping track, which it's hard at this point, but yeah.
We met online, and I told Monette after 3 days that I loved her.
And then I found out that she's been married to 11 guys before me, and still decided to go through with it. Like, how does this guy not regret that? I'm sorry. That tells you everything you need to know about this person if they've been divorced that many times. If they've been divorced multiple times, that's already a red flag, okay? And I know there's many of you out there who might have been divorced a couple, maybe 3 times in your life. Sorry, I'm just saying it, okay? That means you are impulsive and making these decisions when you shouldn't be. It says things about your character and your inability to withstand, you know, toughness in your relationship or to choose a right relationship before committing, which are all just red flags, especially when these people are older and they're now past the phase where they really have time to be messing around with these messy relationships. Nah, you know what I mean? Like, y'all are retirement age almost. Get this figured out, bro, and find somebody else who isn't on husband number 12.
I just felt this connection to him, and like we were kissing, and it was just like, I can't explain it. I don't think you can put it into words what it felt like.
And once again, her only takeaway so far is physical. She's like, yeah, when we kissed, it was like electrifying. It was crazy. Doesn't really mention anything about what he does for her, which it sounds like this guy is the only one that works in the relationship, which again, really not trying to sound like someone who's stereotyping here, because I think this can go both ways in a lot of marriages. But clearly she is marrying people who are the breadwinners, so she doesn't really have to do as much and gets to be a stay-at-home mom to her 1 adult child.
I remember when she told me she had been married 11 times.
I was surprised.
It is the strangest thing I've ever heard.
And it's just crazy to me this guy's willing to overlook that, but you know what? To each his own. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who overlook some other crazy things when they're deciding, you know what? I'm going to commit to this person and marry them. But to me, that's a super deal breaker, okay? Especially if she's not been in therapy for this stuff, because again, clearly this is something mentally going on with her that she needs to get help with, because this cycle is just going to continue.
On paper, John and I don't make much sense. People always think that we're just so opposite, and we are.
And now she's going off of like, yeah, we're pretty much opposites. We actually aren't that compatible, but again, he's a good kisser. Like, it sounds like this lady's criteria for who she wants to marry is, do they excite her physically? Yep. Okay, in that case, let's get the ring on this thing and just call it a day.
And I think most of my stepdads, I did call them dad, but then they would leave and then you got confused all over again.
And just hearing the daughter's point of view, again, this is something that I feel like I was dealing with in my childhood to a very small small degree. You know, there was a time where my mom, after the divorce from my dad, was meeting new people, and so was my dad, and it was just confusing having people coming in and out of your life. So I can't imagine it to this level where, you know, she probably was calling a lot of these guys stepdad throughout the years, as some of these marriages spanned 5-10 years. But when there's been 11 different people, that has just got to mess you up in ways I can't even understand. But it does seem like this daughter is pretty good, you know, in terms of being attached to reality and seeming like a normal person.
I was raised in a religion that you didn't have sex outside of marriage. And so a lot of those were just very short.
Right.
So now we get an interesting tidbit of information here where we find out this lady was raised Mormon, and for her, that was the big impetus for starting these marriages. Was she was with somebody, and then they got to the point where she wanted to get, you know, physical with them, and she realized, you know what, according to my beliefs, I can't do this outside of marriage, so I don't know, I feel like we better jump into this marriage thing so we can jump into the sheets, you know what I'm saying? Like, seriously, she describes that half of her marriages, which I would almost guess all of them, were because she wanted to be physical and felt she had to be married first. So then when that, you know, finally happens, and maybe she finds out instantly these people aren't compatible, or, you know, she sees what they're packing and it's just not sufficient for her, then she's like calling up the divorce lawyers, which is just so batshit crazy to me.
I think there's still something missing in her heart that she's looking for, but only she knows what that is.
And they're talking about this with the nail tech here, who is taken aback by the fact that this lady's been married 11 times, as would anybody. She kind of rolls her eyes and is like, girl, you need therapy, not like another man. Don't be lining up another marriage until you figure out the root of these problems, of this, quote, boy crazy nature you have, which I find it very funny that a lot of people call people boy crazy, and they don't really look at the underlying things that says, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's a good way to trivialize this seriously negative way of thinking that a lot of women have instilled in them by people who are older than them as they're being raised, that you aren't of value unless you have a boy around your arm, you know, unless you have a man's with you, or you're married, or you got a ring on it. Like, none of that is true. And this lady has just fallen for that line of thinking so hard that she's now struggling to commit to marriage with anybody, and getting to an age where it's just going to get harder and harder to find somebody new.
I would say the longest I've been without, like, even a boyfriend, just nobody, is probably about 2 months.
And there it is right there. She claims she has never been single for more than 2 months, which is the biggest red flag that you could ever tell me, okay? That is somebody who is not comfortable with being by themselves, not comfortable with supporting themselves. And if you aren't comfortable doing that, you have no business being in a relationship, okay? You got to be able to love yourself before you can love somebody else. If there's one thing you take away from this dumbass video, hopefully it's that. This lady is just so immature for her age emotionally. I don't know if it's ever going to work out with her with these guys, and I wouldn't be surprised if she's at like divorce number 20 by the time she leaves this earth. Do some, you know, soul searching, get some therapy, go on some hikes, I don't know, do the average things, you know, lawyer up, get a gym membership, whatever the Redditors say post-divorce, you need to be doing that, girl, okay? So that about wraps it up for this video. That was a crazy intro. Let me know if you'd want to see more of this. If not, it was just kind of a fun look into what being 50-something and divorced 11 times over feels like, which hopefully none of us even come close to experiencing that in our lives. As always, thanks so much for watching to the very end of this one. Leave a like if you enjoyed and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. And until next time, peace out.